Hi, welcome to the Mom Files, Moments of Motherhood podcast, a place where the hard things have room to exist without shame.
If you're a mom, you'll get realistic routines, gentle validation, and encouragement to try new things. We're here to be your village, a judgment-free zone for modern motherhood. Take what fits for you and leave the rest.
We're happy you're here. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Mom Files, Moments of Motherhood. This is the first episode, and so we figured since it was the first one, we would go ahead and do kind of like a little introduction about ourselves, especially because you're probably like, who are you? Why would I want to listen to you? Because you definitely don't know anything about us. Well, maybe a little bit if you know us personally, but in the online space, it's still kind of forbidden or hidden, I guess is a better term. But anyway, so
behind closed door.
So I will start a little bit about myself. Hi, I am Aleea. I am a type B with a little c, work from home mom, currently navigating the early stages of motherhood with my son, Dash, who just turned 1. I do like to live life in the flow, embrace flexibility, and while still holding on to just enough structure and organization to kind of keep things moving. And so I do currently live in Eastern Washington with my husband, Ty, obviously Dash, and then we have a full house of pets, so 10 cats and a wiener dog. I did mention I work from home, and so just a little about that. I do run a small business with Hav called Golden Goose Creative, and it's a podcast production company. Over the years, I've helped dozens of podcasters, grow their shows, and so I know firsthand the challenges and joys of balancing both motherhood and business. And so that's kind of what helped inspire me on my end to want to start this show, just because I want space for open and honest conversations about the facets of motherhood. And so Hav will get into more why we decided to do it together, but that's just a little bit about me. Anyway, Hav, maybe you can take it away now.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Hav. I am the co-owner of Golden Goose Podcast Production. And I am also a work from home mom, and I do work for a mid-sized startup where I run operations for a recruiting department. I have a 3-year-old, Azzy. I like to call her a three-nager. She is the diva that I aspire to be every day of my life. I also live with my husband, Tony, and we live in South Carolina. So honestly, very similar lifestyle to Aleea in Eastern Washington, just on the other side of the country. Decided to move far away from my girl. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I also, like I said, I work from home. I do have a full-time, technically corporate job, and then I help Aleea run Golden Goose Creative on the side. And I am a type B or a type C mom. I'm a type C mom. Sorry, I'm just learning about the different types. I surprisingly stayed away from that through all of the obsessive researching. But I love a routine, but we definitely, especially working a full-time job and having Azzy at home, we have to learn how to flex and do what we need to do in the spur of the moment. So we kind of live life going that way. But like Aleea knows, I like to have a good idea of what is going to go on with my day. And yeah, like Aleea said, we just wanted to start this podcast because we're both kind of in the thick of motherhood and, being around other mothers. And we kind of realized that a consensus in the mother community, well, in the parent community in general, especially for parents who have their children full time or a lot of the time, we need hugs, we need love, we need support. So we wanted to go ahead and get together and start this because we wanted a show that avoided the perfectionism, the judgment, and all the highlight reels out there because it can feel really isolating. So we wanted to free up space and remind you that you're not alone, especially when it comes to the parts of motherhood that no one talks about, the hush-hush stuff, the things that you kind of might feel bad or guilty for talking about, but we're all humans. So we're here to be the ones to kind of open that space. So now that you know a little bit more about who we are and why you might want to listen to us, let's go ahead and jump into the juicy stuff. We're going to talk today about how you shouldn't have to apologize for how you parent. So I guess, Aleea, I know I have talked about this a lot, so I can go ahead and jump into it a little bit here, and then we can go on from there. So, talking about not apologizing for how you parent or how explaining your parenting styles or what you decide to do with your family or your child. And I know for me, I spent a lot of time feeling guilty or like I really had to explain myself for the decisions that I was making to everyone around me. I had to come with research on why I was doing a certain method or not doing a certain method. And it honestly really stressed me out. I know this was before Aleea had Dash. So it was a lot of me coming to her and being like, I know you don't have a kid yet, but like, dude, life is eating at me and I don't know what to do because this is what I feel like I should be doing. And this is what I'm being told I should do. And I don't know what's right. So honestly, it took a while, but I think I kind of just stopped explaining myself to people and gave myself freedom to stop feeling like I had to do what I was told or feeling guilty for not wanting to parent the certain way that people are telling me to. So yeah, I just kind of started standing my ground and not apologizing. And it took a lot of work, but at the end of the day, I have been so much less stressed and it's worked really well for our family. And I mean, I get a lot of compliments on Azzy, so I had to have done something right. But Aleea, I know you're kind of still in the thick of it, especially I feel like the newborn to like infant stage is really stressful in a time where everybody has input.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I feel like because you were pregnant and went through the start of motherhood first, it
Mm,
kind of prepared me what to think about is to come, like, so
mm,
I feel like I was kind of expecting people to make comments or like, and so I feel like I kind of prepared a little more just because I feel like I had a little bit more background knowledge versus you just kind of going in blind. Obviously, you still
yeah,
have maybe like other families, etc., people with kids, but I felt like I kind of prepared. But it's crazy because you really don't realize once you're in it, it's kind of like anything. Like there was things I thought I would be like able to stand harder, and it's especially certain people. It's like it would the way I thought I would respond wouldn't be the way I would. Like maybe sometimes I would, just like let them kind of make a remark or
right,
something I would maybe not allow. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I won't say anything. Like it is kind of interesting. Like especially, I don't know. Once you're in a situation, it's always easy to be like, oh, this is what I'd say and this is what I'd do, but
right,
that's not always the case. And so I feel like I agree with you. I feel like I do pretty okay, but there's still a lot of moments where I'm like, whoa, like, especially when I get home, I'm like, wow, I'm surprised I just kind of like rolled over.
right,
And so I think that's kind of brings us to like why people, especially moms, may feel the need to apologize. Because like I know for me, I'm always like, oh, that won't be me. And then all of a sudden maybe I have like a little guilt from
right.
not matching, not even, yeah, not matching what maybe my parents or someone is how they parented. And so it's
Yeah,
just kind of interesting where they will take it, might take over. And I think that kind of relates to like a societal and traditional norm that we have. It's just like what we decide to carry with us. And so, and I know for me, it's a place where I do tend to apologize, not so much for nursing, which I know some people experience, especially after one, but like sleeping habits are definitely something that I sometimes I'm like, oh, sorry, he has to contact nap.
mhm,
Or we have this is a very certain, like specific time that we nap. Like I said, I'm not into routines, but I mean, Dash still has some routine just because like we all have a
right.
little routine. And so those are things, or like the food that we feed him, things like that. And so I definitely think there's areas that we apologize for that we just like, I don't know, I just feel like moms are more prone to is like all those main parenting things.
Yeah, I agree. And I was kind of thinking about it also. Like for me, I feel like it stopped being apologizing per se and more overcompensating with
Mhm.
like research or like I know when as he was a newborn to infant stage, I got really into like researching everything so that I had like a well, this is what the studies that I should like things like that to be like, well, this is why I'm doing that. Where in like reality, it's like, well, this is what works for me. So it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
And it's also different for me depending on who I'm speaking to. So, like
Yes.
elders in my life, I think, especially in American culture, honestly, every culture, being respectful of your elders is so drilled into us. So I think at first I was like, oh, well, you're an elder. And don't get me wrong, when I bring Azzy to her grandparents, 90% of the time, especially if you're watching my child, one, you're only watching my child if I know that you respect me enough to like follow some kind of boundary. But if you're watching my child and you like give her an Oreo when she's one, am I going to say anything? No. Like you, I left her in your hands and I probably should have cleared that up. But my point being, like, my elders that like I'm close to, I am much more like, no, this is what we're doing. And if the only explanation I give now is to like help them understand why I would suggest that they do it as well with her, because this is the behavior that she gets. But she's also 3, so you can see like a direct correlation. But I feel like at the age when she's like 1, 2, especially with strangers or elders who are technically a part of our family community, but I don't know, it was always that awkward, like, oh, haha, yeah, you're right. Oopsie, like, we're just going to go do it this way because that's what's easier for mom right now. And then you end up feeling like the bad guy for one, but then you also feel like, oh, I just made myself look dumb. I'm not. But it's definitely like, yeah, I don't think I like really apologized, but it was like overcompensating and being like, oh, well, it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Definitely like overcompensating, trying to be palpable, I guess is a good way to say. Yeah, is a good way to say it, just because it's like what you said, overcompensate with like research.
Mm-hmm.
Like I definitely did that when it came to baby led weaning. When I was trying it, it was like, people that were nervous, I'd be like, oh no, like there's studies that show, like it doesn't mean more that they're more likely to choke, kind of thing. But it was like, I shouldn't have to like overly explain. It's not like they're showing me stats on like the opposite, like
Right.
I'm like, where's your research showing that that's the right way? Like,
Right.
like it's just interesting that we do as I say as moms, especially just because I do think we're more prone to it, is like how we try to match. Like we try and like you said, overcompensate and be like, here's research backing it up versus just being like, no, this is how we're doing it because this is just what we decided as a family.
No, I remember that with doing baby-led weaning specifically. It's so scary for people. And I understand why it doesn't work out for a lot of people. But for me, it ended up being like, I would just take her during mealtime because I would literally be like, hey, we do purees. Like
Right.
I can send
Right. It's
purees.
not an all or nothing. Yeah.
Matter of fact, I have a freezer load of purees. And they'd be like, well, we just don't like you can feed her. But then I thought on the other end, I would get like, oh, she's eating New York strip steak and she's such a spoiled little baby. And I'm like, well, she eats what I eat. It literally has. But yeah, for sure. And there's always something to say about co-sleeping or whatever the case. I think that was the biggest one for us is like you mentioned, I think at the beginning, like contact napping.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't have her for the night? Why do you need her for the night? She's 6 months old. When she's running around crazy, you can have her. Like, she's 6 months. You don't want her anyway. She's going to wake up 3 times.
Right. Contact naps is a big one. I especially get them when I'm out and about.
Mm-hmm.
Like one time we were somewhere, I think it was like some sort of sporting event, and he had fallen asleep and someone was like, oh, why don't you just lay him down on the ground? And I was like, oh, I would, but I can't. And they said that comment like, oh, he's so spoiled. And I was just like, yeah.
But also, yes. Oh, somebody, yeah. I was holding Azzy the other day at Home Depot after she had been running around, and I picked her up so that she would stop running around.
Right.
She is huge. She looks like she's a 6-year-old, so I get it to a point. But the cash register, like, clerk lady just kept being like, you're a big girl, get down. And she kept looking at me like, mommy, like, and I kept being like, it's fine, Azzy, like, whatever. But this lady got on to the point where my toddler, like, got down because she was, like, getting embarrassed. I'm like, I just don't think that I should have to sit here and explain to you that she's actually only 3. And it's like very normal for a 3-year-old to want to be held. I understand. She looks huge. I've also been holding her for 2 minutes. You have no idea what we've been doing all day.
Well, and
like,
I'm like,
it doesn't matter.
And even if she was 6, you don't know why. Like maybe she has, a disability or something. Like just to make assumptions about, people's kids. It's like, it's not hurting anyone. It's like, I don't know. It's a prime example of like not worth like explaining yourself sometimes and to stop apologizing because it's like, yeah, people just don't know your situation. I think that's a good example because it's true. It's like, that's why I was just like, yeah, because it's like, that's nice. You can feel that way and I'm going to still do it.
Right.
I think that is a great segue into kind of like why, like what stopped you from explaining yourself to everyone. Like I know me, one of the big like breaking points. So I'm a recovering people pleaser, I like to say. And so when I realized that even when I try to appease people, it seemed like they would still be angry or judge, like no matter what. So like even if I did what they wanted or I did what I wanted, yeah, the outcome was the same. So I just felt like I realized like, well, if they're going to be judgy and angry, I might as well do what I want just because it's like a lot of the times it's not so much about what's happening. It's just people kind of want you to do what they want. And sometimes you just don't. I don't know. So that was kind of like for me, I realized like, well, I'm going to just do it. How about for you?
Yeah, I also feel like a lot of it is I realize maybe not so much judgment, but ways that they grew up and what they did and they
Mm-hmm.
think is right.
100%.
And I know I talked to you about this a lot, but just like a lot of the apologizing for me was choosing to parent a different way because I was able to. I like to say like I don't even necessarily like the word but for lack of a better word, I am privileged enough to be able to keep Azzy with me and to do these things where I'm working, but I also don't get to take her to do activities. And when she was younger, get to sleep with her and get to nurse her. Whereas a lot of people in my village had had to go straight back into physical work.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that apologizing was like, at first thought they were judging me for not doing it the way they did it, but then kind of realizing like they literally don't know any other way because they didn't have any options. So for me, a lot of it too was just like getting out of my own head. There still is that judgment, especially from the strangers and the people in public who think that they have the right to say anything. Anyways, I could go deep into that for a long minute, but when I realized that one, what they think and say doesn't affect me at all, and I purposefully am raising my child and doing the things like communicating with her as a 1-year-old in a way that people think you should only be communicating with like an older child because I want her to be able to like there are things that I've seen in my childhood and growing up that if done differently, I feel like I could have expressed myself better, right? And that's where we're at right now. So it's a little bit different than co-sleeping and stuff. But communication for me is the where most people are like, oh, like you're talking to her too much. Like you don't need to explain yourself. And I'm like, well, one, it doesn't affect you. Whether you judge me or not, at the end of the day, what's going to stress me out more? And usually listen to what they have to say is stressing me out more because like my child needs communication. But anyways, the point being, what I do doesn't affect them. So if it's not affecting them, then like I might, because I also am a recovering people pleaser, I might think about it for another day. But like at the end of the day, that's fine because especially with people in public, like I've definitely done that before where I'm like, she's only 2, it's fine. And then they're usually like, oh, like I would have never known she's so big. Oh my gosh, what a smart girl. I would have never guessed she's 2. And then that leads into like a whole nother thing. So I kind of pick my battles on the day. I'm like, well, I want to get home. So I'm just gonna ha ha ha. Come on, let's go. Like I don't have time. But yeah, it definitely is a different based on who it is. And cutting off your brain, I say this knowing how hard it is, but like part of it is just being like, okay, like you're in your head about it. And honestly, they probably aren't even judging you. They're probably trying to help you by giving you a break and like telling the child to get off of you so that you don't have to carry them. But little do you know, this is actually giving you my break because now I don't have to run around the store with her.
Right. Right. And yeah, I think it's just, especially when it's people that are coming in, like you said, strangers, it's like sometimes they only see a 2-minute snapshot.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't know why I'm doing, like, you're right. Like you said, this might be my break. This might be what's making everyone's life easier. Plus, they don't know. Maybe you had a really bad day. Maybe something really traumatic. Like, we don't know people's stories or situations. And so to just be like, oh, and like you said, maybe it's just people trying to be helpful, like, oh, get off mom. But it's like,
Mhm.
again, you don't know why we're doing it. And so, yeah, I agree. I think once you realize, okay, this really only affects me, it's a lot easier to start changing your mindset
Mhm.
towards not apologizing anymore, or at least not overcompensating as much. Do you have a podcast and a pile of laundry staring you down? Are you questioning your life choices during nap time or working at midnight with one eye open and 3 tabs running?
Yeah, same. We've lived that chaos. Hey, still living it. That's why we offer podcast editing and post-production services for the moms who have things to say, but zero time to do all the things. Let us help you get your voice out there without losing your mind, your message, or your weekend.
Think less burnout, more snuggles. Less tech stress, more talking to your audience in peace. Interested? Tap the link in the description to learn more. Plus, we offer free discovery calls, no pressure, just real talk to see if we vibe.
Let's make podcasting easier because you're already doing enough.
And so I think that kind of leads us into mindset shifts. Like how, if you are someone who apologizes for how you parent or overcompensates, like how do you deal with it? And I know like one thing I would suggest is let people be wrong about you.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually recently read the book Let Them by Mel Robbins. It's actually, I made a note of it. Let me see. I discussed it it was in chapter 5. Side note, I highly recommend reading this if you haven't yet, especially if you're someone like me that I really hold weight into relationships and things like that. And I fester on conversations and things for like if Hav and I were to have a conversation, I'd probably still think about it for like the next week.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, if that's someone like you and you just deal with a lot of emotional opinions and stuff like that, I highly recommend reading it. But anyway, in the book, she talks about how everyone is going to have critical opinions about you, even like the people you love, and obviously total strangers. But the people that you love are going to have opinions about you as well as total strangers. It's just like part of life. So like, it doesn't matter what the situation is. It's just like people, it's natural to form opinions, form like judgments about people. Like, it doesn't mean they hate you or that they're like, whatever, but it's just, someone, if they have a negative opinion or an opinion at all, that doesn't mean they feel a certain way about you as a whole. It just means that they're feeling a certain way about what's like happening. And so I just think it's a excellent point that like people will always judge. And so it doesn't mean it's out of malice or that they, like I said, that they hate you. They're just sharing from their own experience, or like what Hav said earlier, like sometimes people can only parent from how they parented. So maybe they went back to work. And so now that we're work from home moms, it's just different and the perspective's going to be different. But, they're allowed to think that way and you're allowed to think the way you want to. So just let people be wrong about you. It's just a reminder that they're going to have feelings. Like you don't have to owe anyone any explanations.
Absolutely. I say this a lot because I have to remind myself a lot. One, what you say and it's more about how you say what you say. And a lot of people aren't taught to communicate in a way that comes off as non-judgmental, whether they are being or not. So I know for me, if I'm ever talking to another parent and I have a suggestion, I try to form it in a way that's like, I don't know if you thought about trying this, but this has worked for me.
Conversation style versus
yeah. Exactly. Let's have a conversation. But a lot of people, like, I literally am a communications major. Like, that is what I was trained to do. So saying that to say sometimes you have to step out of yourself and out of how things are making you feel and think about, like we're saying, how people were raised, what people had to go through, and the fact that they don't understand necessarily that what they're saying is coming off judgy. I know a lot because I'm 3.5 years into this, which it's still new for me, but I've started to realize like a lot of the suggestions I had where I thought people were judging me, they weren't judging me at all. They just didn't know how to say it in a way that also left room for me to figure it out for myself because they were trying so hard to help. So sometimes if you can step outside of yourself, like I said, I'm going to think about, like Aleea said too, we're going to think about the conversation probably for another week. But if you can rationalize for yourself, this is what it looked like. That's like what I did with the hardware store lady. I'm like, okay, well, this is what it looked like to her.
Right.
This is what she was probably trying to do. Probably wasn't trying to be negative. It made me feel negative and it made me feel icky. But like, life will move on. So it's hard to do. That's like a guy telling you to turn your brain off. But, as best as you can, just like remember life is different for everybody.
Yeah. And I think that's an excellent point. It's like, if just because it came off negatively doesn't mean they meant it to be negative.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've talked about before. It's like reading a text message. Sometimes it just it doesn't come off the way you wanted it to because it's,
Right.
and I think you have a good point. A lot of times people are just trying to help. And so it's not like their intent. It's just, we don't view it that way. And I think it's especially easy once you become a mom because the stigma just feels like everyone's like attacking you. But
Literally.
that doesn't always mean the case. However, at the same time, let's say maybe maybe it is negative, and
Right.
sometimes we do need to set boundaries and be firm about our choices. And because I think that's also a really hard thing to do. And so one thing I would suggest if you have a hard time setting boundaries is to maybe preset your expectations. So
Mhm.
before you go and visit family, whether it's on holidays or I don't know, maybe they do live in your area and you see them quite regularly, it's like maybe it's time to let them know like, hey, this is like our routine currently, or this is
Mhm.
what we like to do parenting wise, or maybe this is like the time we have to leave because of maybe you do really intense sleep schedules type thing. Just letting them know ahead of time because then it might be easier to set that boundary because they won't like they'll just be prepared for it versus like getting there and then kind of like throwing everyone in
Yeah.
like a
And I
fluster.
will say sometimes people just don't respect schedules either, no matter what you say. But I think it makes it easier on yourself to not feel like you have to apologize for leaving at a certain time. Or I know my sister-in-law and my brother they're very type A. They have a schedule. Their kids have napping at the same time, and it works for them really well. And my family's not the best with schedules. But if you show up 3 hours late and I told you I have to leave 4 hours in, you can't, like, you complaining about seeing my child for 30 minutes is your fault. So we're going to move on. Sorry that you didn't get to spend time with us, but like, I did my best and I warned you accordingly and you didn't follow my boundaries. So that's your fault.
I was just going to say, it's like that's what helps when you preset. You can be like, well, I let you know.
Hmm.
I told you this is the time you had, this is how long, and it's like you said, you
Yeah.
gave them an opportunity to
Yeah,
that boundary. And
absolutely. And then I would also suggest on that topic too of presetting
yes,
expectations is if you do have a family who is maybe more judgmental or has a lot more to say, go ahead and do your research and have a few examples of why having a schedule works for you. If it's harder for you to like set boundaries and stuff, I know that worked for me, especially with holding my child a lot as a newborn. We showed research on how, fun fact, did you know that a baby thinks that they're a part of you until they're 9 months old? Like things like that really helped people around me be like, oh, okay. Or there's research on everything, right? And it's gonna you can use the research for whatever you're deciding, but sometimes having like 1 to 2 quick little snippets of like this is why we chose this, I have seen usually gets people off my back because they're like, oh, like you're not just messing around, I guess.
right.
And then when your kid gets older, hopefully everything that you're doing proved for you, and then you can just tell them to be quiet because everything they told you to do and you did opposite worked in your favor. So now you can go talk about somebody else's kid.
Yes, and I think having the research can help because if you are trying to set a boundary, so let's say you've decided to have the conversation to set a boundary, which for an example, you're like, hey, I appreciate your concern, but I'm just not looking. This is what we're doing. I don't need your input. Like, sorry, like this is just how our family's going to do things. Maybe they have pushback. That's a great time to be like, if you do decide to not just leave it there and you do want to justify it a little bit, you'd be like, here's the research to prove
Mhm.
why we're doing it this way, kind of thing. So I think that's a great point.
I will say too, also research, like think of yourself as like a little science experiment. What have you seen that doesn't work and does work for you? I know for me, for sleeping, I would just tell people like, hey, this is what happens if I don't co-sleep with her, and this is what happens if I do co-sleep with her. So for me, this isn't for her, even if it was, screw off, but this is for me. And they'd be like, oh, you're literally actively choosing to do that because you don't. And I'm like, yes, this is a choice that I made.
Yes. And that's what we're choosing to do. Right.
Yeah. So I think in general, the consensus is try to set a predisposed boundary, let people know what your expectations are so that they can understand what is to be expected of them or not expected, right? Come with some research if that's what works for you. And at the end of the day, it really is what's best for you. So if you can step out of it a little bit and take what everybody says with a grain of salt and just remember that you are the parent and nobody knows your family the way that you do.
Yes.
So do what is best for you, your child, and your unit.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And honestly, once you do those things, it's crazy how good it can feel to parent on your own terms and like in an authentic way. Just because once you set those boundaries or you stop skipping the justification, or maybe you do have that research to back it up, like you'll just feel so much relief and like clarity and like just confidence in your parenting. Like I know for me, even in the last year that Dash has been alive, it's crazy how much better I feel today than I did even just 6 months ago. And, it's like you only have one life. So it's like, why waste it feeling guilty or overwhelmed and things like that? Like Hav and I have been saying, we're the ones that have to be with our children all the time. So it's like, if people don't understand why you're making those decisions, that's just, it is what it is. Sometimes you have to make choices for you and you like we've said, or we'll probably say a lot, you know, you and your family best. And like, I know one quick little thing is, I can't remember who said this to me. I think it was my dad. People they're going to try and make you feel guilty, but you can only feel guilty if you let them. Mm-hmm. And so of course there's times that guilt is important, but a lot of times I do think that people like to use, like to make you feel guilty, to kind of manipulate you to do what they want. And that doesn't mean they're trying to, like, once again, be malicious about it, but just don't let them or weaponize your empathy, because making decisions for your family, you know best.
You should never feel guilty for doing what's right for your child.
That's
because at the end of the day, as long as they are safe and healthy, your sleeping schedule doesn't determine whether they're going to grow up to be an athlete or a doctor or whether they're going to be healthy on the health chart. I guess sleep a little bit. But you know what I'm saying? Like, Azzy going to bed at midnight and waking up at 10 a.m. affects nobody around me. Don't tell me that she needs to go to bed at 7. I'm glad that works for you. Like it's really...
I was just going to say, if it doesn't affect them.
Yeah. If it doesn't affect the child's health, it doesn't affect the child's health, and it doesn't affect them. They might think it affects them, but it doesn't, unless you rely on them for childcare. But even then, if you're able to, find an adult that respects your boundaries to a point.
100%.
But yeah, it's definitely like, find what works best for you. And we'll talk about this later, but sometimes toxic family members are a bit too much, and you have to think about what you have to do in a situation with a family member or somebody that you love very much that is no longer being a respectful addition to your village. We'll talk more about that in an episode or 2 down the line.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think making sure to do these steps, parent how you want, try and set the boundaries. However, sometimes they can still cross those boundaries, and multiple times. And so it's like, yeah, like Hav said, we'll talk more about that part of this later, is like how, unfortunately, if you are done apologizing and you've done all the steps and they're still not being respected, what to do. But we do encourage you to trust your instincts and parent in alignment with your values. So we hope you took something away from today's episode. We would suggest to try some of these boundary setting tips that we gave, especially if this is something that you're having a hard time with. Let us know if you have an additional tip that maybe we missed, or if you'd like us to dive even deeper into this topic, just because we know it can be one that we could probably talk about forever.
Absolutely.
So we do hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Stick around, because the next episode is going to be covering invisible labor. in motherhood. And I'm sure it's something that you potentially have experienced. I know there can just be a disconnect between our partners and our needs, especially when it feels like we're carrying a lot of the load. So if you are feeling this way, we hope to see you at the next episode, and we will chat with you then. Bye.
See you later. Thanks for sharing your time with us today. We're so glad you're part of this messy, beautiful village.
If this episode made you laugh, cry, or feel just a little more human, pass it on to a mom friend who needs it too. And hey, if you haven't already, hit subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more moms find the show and gives us a tiny dopamine hit. Let's be real.
Until next week, keep the kids alive and your coffee hot, or at least reheated once.